So, a worm in the cocoon is not as beautiful as the butterfly in the sky. And I know that sounds like, yeah, you're right, and there's probably some sort of biologist that's like, no, caterpillars are cute too. But for these purposes, for the pivoting purposes of this evening, the first thing is I didn't realize that the pivot for everybody really meant let's just talk about fucking COVID, and I didn't realize that it should have just said let's talk about COVID. So going back to a worm in the cocoon, a worm in the cocoon is not as beautiful as the butterfly in the sky. And when we talk about the pivot, and what we've all talked about tonight, is the transition from one space, one comfortable space, going through a metamorphosis and through the uncomfortableness that is, and coming out on the other side with beauty and grace. And I would just like to say that the cocoon part of everything kind of sucks. And that's where we're at right now. So going into how butterflies are made, the beautiful thing is a beautiful butterfly has to lay an egg. And that reminds me of my girlfriend Katie from high school. It's a true story. So we are 18 and 19 respectfully, and we have just graduated high school. And one of my favorite things about Katie is she was Lebanese. That is not true. She was Lebanese, and she was the most beautiful girl that you could meet walking around, and she was the greatest dork. So she got a lot of confusing boyfriends that didn't know what to do with the smartness and the beauty and the dorkiness, but the love of life. And so she was one of my best friends. We used to sing this song, "It's the end of the world as we know it," right? You know this song? And I feel fine. Except for we modified it, and it was I'm losing my erection, right? Like instead of losing my religion. It was a very funny song. And so Katie came to me and she said, "Hey, so I've been dating this guy for like 3 years, but then I had this little affair, and now I'm pregnant, and I'm 19, but I want to go to college." And we both realized over tears that while all of our parents were very supportive and that you could have an abortion, she had chosen not to have an abortion. And so she was already planning to go to school at UCLA, and she already had the scholarships, and decidedly she would now be a single mother, and she would live at home. And it turned out that was one of the better things that she could do, because she ended up having 3 beautiful children, and just having this beautiful life that we didn't know. And so in terms of how that worked is she had these big plans to do something else, and she created a whole different world for herself. And the pivot now is to see her with her 3 children, and she runs a beautiful business. So then what happens with caterpillar is it goes into the feeding stage. And I don't know if you know this, but when caterpillars are basically traveling the world, their literal job is to eat the entire time. They literally eat while they're sleeping, they eat while they're awake, they eat all the time. Their job is to basically get all the nutrients that they possibly can get along the way. And that reminds me of my friend Becky. And my friend Becky, she is the mother of my godchild, who is fabulous, and I love her. And she's growing up too. She's like 17 or 18 now. She's just an amazing godchild. But Becky had some hard times. Becky had moved to New York with kind of just this great job, but not much else. And then she got knocked up by my friend, and it was really great, and they got married, and then it was like 6 months later, and they realized halfway through her pregnancy that they hated each other. So that was really difficult. But they stuck it out, and when Lexi was 3 years old, it had gotten so bad that Becky was packing up her daughter and fleeing the space that she lived in so that she could feel safe. And in terms of that, what she did was she took away from what was negative and she started feeding on the positive things. So I can leave this terrible situation, but I can pay my own rent. I can leave this, I'm in this terrible situation, but I can get my daughter to school. And she started feeding on the love of herself, and she started getting better jobs and making sure that she could get out of a terrible situation so that she could be in a better situation. And a couple of years ago, she decided that the only way that she could feed her soul was to move home to Missouri. And that, to me, was a courageous pivot, to leave your daughter and to leave your home so that you can go feed your soul, so that you can be good for your daughter. Those pivots are hard. Those pivots are very stressful. So then as you move along, there's the Pupa. Do you know what a Pupa is? It's basically the transformation when a caterpillar is in a cocoon. Do you know what I'm talking about? And this is where I find myself talking about my next little story is Nathan and I, my partner Nathan and I, we've been together 13 years. We'll be together 14 years in January. And we are together for several years, and we're driving to Kentucky to go visit his grandparents, and we're taking the kids with us, and the kids are pretty young at this point, so they're when I say pretty young, I met them when they were like 10 and 14, so it might have been they were like 16 and 12, so we're taking the kids up to see Grandma and Grandpa up in Kentucky, and you know, we've been sleeping together a while. I mean, we hadn't quite, you know, had sex yet, but totally kidding, we totally did. But as we're driving up to Kentucky, we're about 3/4 of the way there, and his grandmother calls, and she just wants to make sure that we're not going to sleep together in the same room. And so that was really hard, because then we were in a cocoon of somebody else's house, but we couldn't be comfortable together. We couldn't, you know, sleep together. We've been doing this for a couple of years. So that was our Pupa moment. so the hard part is that we never actually broke out of that shell, because Nathan's grandmother's passed away and his grandfather lives with somebody else, so we're never going to be able to sleep under their roof and, you know, do the nasty with them around. So to read about Pupa, most pupa consist of a protective outer casing inside which the tissues of the insect undergo a drastic reorganization to form the adult body. Insects that undergo pupation include the many different kinds of butterfly and beetle and many kinds of fly. The pupa is often called a chrysalis in butterflies and moths. So I just thought it was funny. So then, as you move along, then the butterfly comes out and it emerges, and it's now an adult butterfly. And this reminds me of some friends of mine. They have 2 daughters, Kira and Lexi. And Kira and Lexi are early teens, late and early teens. And if you know my friends, they basically met in college, and they were the couple that you sort of wanted to emulate. You wanted to make sure that you treated your partner like they treated each other. And as it turns out, they do that, and they still do that. But now they have these 2 daughters, and one is like 16 and the other is 13, and she is having the worst time of everything. Everything is a tantrum, everything is upsetting, everything is awful, everything is the worst. She's doing terrible in school, she doesn't have a lot of friends, and it's very concerning, it's very worrisome. And what she did was she took the daughter took a minute, and she went and they saw some professionals and came back to mom and dad. And it turns out that Kira is actually Caden. And at 13 years old, what was keeping her back was that she was uncomfortable in her space, and she had no place to go with it. And she was not feeling like she was a girl. In fact, Caden is a boy, and all he needs is to make sure that he has a safe place to become his authentic self. And what I think is that takes a courageous spirit, because when you sit in an uncomfortable pivot, you can only hope that you have a space to come out of it on the other side. And that's sort of how I feel about what has happened with my friends. So this all being said, right, so talking about like a butterfly, going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, it takes courage, because you can't go into being a pupus and knowing full well that as you're growing out of it, it hurts, it sucks, it's the worst, but know that getting on the other side is to become a butterfly. So I would just like to say that as we move through the world, just know that being a pupus sucks, but one day you'll be a beautiful butterfly. Thank you.
Koryn Young, y'all. Come on, give it up for Koryn Young.